Hi guys! Welcome sa Asipan. In this video ay tutuloy natin yung series natin on calculus. So pinag-aaralan pa rin natin yung limit symbols at itutuloy natin yan dito sa video na to. Just a very brief review, sa previous video ay napag-aaralan natin yung notation ng right hand and left hand limit. So the limit of x plus 3 as x approaches 1 from the left is equal to 4 is written as itong expression na to, no? Yung arrow na nakikita nyo, ito yung approaches. At yung superscript na minus, yan yung from the left. Ganun din yung sa baba, no? The limit of x plus 3 as x approaches 1 from the right is equal to 4. Ang pagkakaiba lang nila, yung minus na nagsisimbolize ng from the left at yung plus na nagsisimbolize ng from the right. Gusto ko balikan yung area problem, no? Di ba sa area problem, sabi natin, we want to approximate the actual area under a curve by drawing rectangles, no? And we want the number of rectangles as many as possible, no? So remember, yung n is the number of rectangles. And we want n to be as many as we can, no? In fact, as n increases, the approximate area gets closer and closer to the actual area. Ibig sabihin, the limit as n increases of the approximate area is equal to the actual area. Now, pag ginawa natin f of n yung approximate area at a yung actual area, we can say that the limit as n increases of f of n is equal to a. Now, the phrase n increases without bound is written in symbol as, kita nyo, and read as n approaches positive infinity. Gusto ko lang ipaliwanag kung bakit merong increases without bound, no? Bakit siya without bound? Kung babalikan natin yung problem, remember yung n natin ay number of rectangles, di ba? So, pwede natin damihan yung rectangles. In fact, we can say any large number, like 1,000. Gusto natin ng 1,000 rectangles doon sa area na yon. Of course, maliliit yun masyado, no? Halos di mo na makita. Pwedeng 1 million, pwedeng 1 billion. So actually, we can make n as large as we want, no? Kaya sinasabi natin na n increases without bound. And yung n increases without bound na yan is written in symbol as, ito nga yung n, yung arrow, tapos yung positive infinity, and is read as n approaches positive infinity. And pag ginamit na natin yung notation sa second bullet, we can write it in limit notation. The limit of f of n as n approaches infinity is equal to a. Or another way of saying it is the limit as n approaches infinity of f of n is equal to a. Ito pa yung isang example, no? Dito ang n ay number of sides nung polygon. Yung f of n is the area of the polygon. And yung radius ng circle natin is 1, di ba? So remember, yung area ng circle, naalala nyo, if the radius is 1, then pi r squared, di ba? So area is pi, ang r natin ay 1. So, pi times 1 squared, which means that area is equal to pi. So, yung area ng circle na yan ay pi. And we can make the area of the inscribed polygon as close to the area of the circle by increasing the number of sides of the polygon. And we want n to approach infinity. Gusto natin maraming sides yung polygon para i-approach niya yung area, which is equal to pi. So, paano naman pag-function, no? Sa previous slide, ang nag-approach ng infinity ay n kasi yung n is the number of sides. And dun sa area problem is the number of rectangles, no? So, dito hindi na n, x na kasi pag-function na yung pinag-uusapan natin, sa xy plane tayo. So, therefore, yung variable natin ay x tsaka f of x, no? Ano ba nangyayari sa function as x approaches infinity, no? For example, in this particular function, which is f of x equals 1 over x. Paano nangyayari sa kanya? Ano ibig sabihin ng x approaches infinity? Lumalaki yung x natin, di ba? Ibig sabihin, papunta siya sa kanan. So, ano nangyayari sa function as x approaches infinity? For example, pag 1 yung x, yung y value mo ay 1, di ba? Pag ang x ay 3, andito na siya. 1/3 yan kasi ang x natin ay 3 at dahil ang function natin ay f of x equals 1 over x. Pag 4, nandito siya. No? So, ano napapansin nyo? Palapit siya ng palapit sa 0. No? In fact, halos lumapit na siya dun sa sa x-axis. No? So, kaya sinasabi dito, the limit of 1 over x as x approaches infinity is equal to 0. What about as x approaches negative infinity? Ano ibig sabihin ng negative infinity? Saan naman siya papunta? Papunta naman siya sa kaliwa, yung x, di ba? So, pag ang x mo ay negative 1, ang y mo ay negative 1. Negative 2, ang y mo ay negative 1 half, no? Pag ang x mo ay negative 3, so saan siya papunta? Palapit din siya ng palapit sa sa x-axis. Habang papunta siya ng papunta sa kaliwa, or habang yung x natin ay paliit ng paliit, which means it approaches negative infinity. So ganun din, the limit of 1 over x as x approaches negative infinity is equal to 0. So tawag pala dito limits at infinity, no? And this is one of the topics that we will discuss, so it's okay kung hindi nyo pa masyadong naintindihan kasi magkakaroon tayo ng maraming examples dito later. Now, what if x approaches 0 from the left? So, pag ang x ay negative 3, negative 2, negative 1, negative 1 half, palapit sa 0, di ba? Negative 1/4. Ano kaya mangyayari? Pag ang x ay negative 3, ang y natin ay negative 1/3, di ba? Kasi 1 over x. Pag negative 2, the value of the function will be negative 1 half. Pag negative 1, negative 1 din. Pag negative 1 half, magiging negative 2 na siya. Pag negative 1/4, magiging negative 4 na siya. So pag ang value ng x natin ay naging equal to negative 1/1000, ang value ng f of x natin ay magiging negative 1,000. Pag sinubstitute natin yung x dyan, di ba? Na negative 1,000 with the th, magiging negative 1,000. So, kung mapapansin nyo, pababa ng pababa yung value ng function. Kaya siya papunta sa negative infinity. Baliktad naman sa x approaches 0 from the right. So, kung mapapansin nyo, pag 3, 1/3. Pag 2, 1 half. Pag 1, 1. Pag x equals 1 half, 2. Pag x equals 1/4, magiging 4 yan. Pag x equals 1,000 with h, if x is equal to 1,000th, ang f of x natin magiging 1,000. So, pataas naman ng pataas yung value ng function natin na 1 over x. So, nakalimutan ko ilagay, no? Pero this function is f of x equals 1 over x. Okay? So, pag yung limit ng function is negative infinity tsaka infinity, tawag natin dun infinite limits. Again, this is another topic na pag-aaralan natin. No? So, kung hindi nyo masyadong naintindihan ngayon, it's okay. Pwede yung ulit-ulitin yung video and then abangan nyo yung post ko on infinite limits. No? Because we will have more examples and mas maliliwanagan kayo. No? Sa ngayon, this is just a brief preview of what we are going to learn on limits. Okay, so to summarize, ito yung mga napag-aralan natin, no? Yung left hand and right hand limits na symbol. So, for example, yung limit of x plus 3 as x approaches 1 from the left is equal to 4. So, ito yung example nitong una, no? Ito naman ay the limit of x plus 3 as x approaches 1 from the right is equal to 4. Tapos yung limit na negative infinity tsaka positive infinity. By the way, yung positive infinity, pwede siyang isulat lang as infinity. Pwede rin na mayroong positive infinity. So it doesn't matter. No? Pag sinabi mong infinity, ibig sabihin nun positive yun. And yung last example natin is yung limits at infinity. No? So, don't worry about the symbol kasi masasanay naman kayo niyan later dahil marami naman tayong examples. At magsusolve tayo ng mga limits in the next video. In fact, ay pag-aaralan natin yung laws of limits. Alright, so sana nag-enjoy kayo dito sa ating tutorial. Again, huwag kayo ma-intimidate, no? Ulitin nyo lang yung video and then pag-aralan nyo yung symbols, yung limit notation, and you'll do fine. Maraming salamat. I'll see you in the next video.